is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another panel here. I guess it's just a solo panel today with me. My name is Powerbang, also known as Lance Frisbee. I am a content creator of about a decade now, and also the CEO of Aftershock Media Group, an agency that manages a lot of content creators in the space. And a big thank you to Supercell for having me here today to talk to you as part of the Creator Academy. We're going to be diving into content creation settings across all your favorite apps today, and hopefully giving you guys some great advice that you can take away today. Again, let's dive into it because we got a lot to get through today. So first and foremost, we got ourselves advice for content creation. Now, my goal today is really just to give you guys some great tips, right? We're going to talk through all of the components of content. So we're going to talk recording, we're going to talk editing, audio packaging, logistics, what that means, essentially file management and kind of handling all of that stuff. But if you guys have any questions along the way today, I invite you and encourage you to put those in the chat. I would be happy to answer them either when it makes sense, or we can dive into those at the end of today's session. We'll be going for about an hour long today. And without further ado, let's get into it. Some of this is going to be review for some of you guys. Maybe, I don't know, 75%. You might know already, but my goal today is to give you some tips and tricks and maybe some tools that you did have when you rolled out of bed this morning or this afternoon, whenever you gamers call it time to start the day. So first and foremost, let's get into recording. Recording happens for the most part. Most gamers would say that OBS is kind of the standard for recording. I'm going to do a bit of screen share, and I wanted to start screen sharing today with the most awkward of all of the apps that we're going to look at today, and that is OBS. The reason it is awkward is because I am on it right now talking to you guys. So we're going to see like a fancy little mirror effect, but I'm going to try to position things so it is less awkward than it could be. So first and foremost, we're going to dive into the general interface and the docs. What do I mean by that? Here is OBS. You're seeing me live right now, and granted, I go till forever, but this is your canvas that you're seeing on the screen right now. The interface itself, you can see all of these little tools are things I have at my disposal to be able to control the stream, to be able to control what is being output, and to be able to control what is being recorded. So first, I want to talk general interface. What can you do to make this a bit more, fun, easy to navigate, scroll? At the top, when you go to, you can click settings button here. I want to point out is the same as the setting button down at the bottom part of the screen behind me. So you can literally see it right here. That settings button is the same thing. So when you click it, it'll pop up a settings window that comes up in the middle of the screen. And now that that's up, voila, we're not, transitioning into endless mirrors. So in the general section, first thing I want to point out is theme. Now, this theme is what this whole thing looks like, and I have the Yami section, or the Yami theme. Yami? I'm gonna go with Yami. I've got that selected as kind of the default, and that is what it looks like here. But let's quickly go through a few of the other options so you can see kind of what it changes. Here is Acri, here is Gray, and here is Light, and oh my God, like this is not, don't put it on light. This is just a little tip from me to you. The default system one, very similarly, it's very bright, and for those of you that hang out in a dark room, not great. So I go with Yami. It looks cool. And then if you scroll further down the list to output, I like a confirmation when starting streams. Just today, prepping to do this talk with you guys, I accidentally started a stream, so that's fun. Had to quickly oh crap, I don't want to go live on my channel. Once that happens, then people come in and start asking questions typically. Put a confirmation up there so that way when you actually click the start streaming button, it says, are you sure you want to do this? And normally you're going to be cool to say, yeah, let's do this. Same thing on stopping streams. When you click stop stream, it will ask you, are you sure? So those are some things that you can do. So that is kind of the general theme that I would kind of have set up as far as your appearance goes. But let's talk about docs now. So you've got your main screen here. The canvas is in the middle, which you can see my mouse kind of zooming around. But docs are up here at the top menu. These docs, I have scenes on right now. And if you look at the bottom left, you'll see scenes and sources. That's this section here. For those of you guys familiar with OBS, I'm not going to go super deep into this, but you have all of the different scenes. I can't think of a more descriptive way to call them, but this is what you're seeing right now. I have the present my screen scene selected, and I only have my monitor and my camera that are being outputted, which is what you're seeing on the screen. So if I was to switch to, say, a presentation, now I'm here. All I did was switch scenes, right? So pretty easy, pretty basic thing to understand, but docs go way deeper than this. There are actual plugins that you can download. I've got one called a vertical plugin, which now I have a different scene. So you can see me over there on the other side, different cameras set up. And I have the ability now to turn on multiple docs, and now I can turn on vertical scenes, vertical sources. We'll put a link to that plugin after the stream is over today, so you guys can download that if you're interested. But essentially, this vertical plugin makes it possible for me to record vertical content for YouTube Shorts, for TikTok, for Instagram Reels, Facebook Reels, etc. Any vertical content, I can actually record that at the exact same time, which is really, really cool. The way you can do that is by recording all together, by hovering over record vertical, or you can do what's called a backtrack clip, which kind of does a flashback recording using your buffer, which means something could have happened a minute ago. And if you have a film buffer of about 2 minutes, you could capture that, which is really cool. Again, trying to show you the interface and the settings a little bit today, more so than the actual content creation strategies. But just so you are aware, there are docs, and these can be especially useful during live streaming as well, so that you can look at stats for your channel dashboard, which is actually super useful. Okay, so let's go check the next section here. Next thing it's important to understand is recording versus live streaming. These have different settings, so to speak. So recording, you may have different output settings than live streaming. So let's talk about that. Inside of your settings menu, you're going to notice that you have a stream setting and you have an output setting. Under the output setting, there's a tab for streaming and there's a tab for recording. Now, recording, I can't modify any of these in real time because I'm actually using the software to broadcast to you guys right now. So you'll be able to see, though, under streaming, we have 8,000 is the bit rate, which is how much bandwidth you're essentially using to send the feed out. I would recommend as you're broadcasting or streaming that you have at a minimum 4,000 kilobits up. And that is equivalent to roughly 4 megabits upstream. This is constrained by your internet connection, right? So if you only have maybe a 10 megabit upstream, you don't want to set this at 12,000 because you're going to use all of that bandwidth and all of a sudden your stream is going to crash and buffer, etc. My personal upstream is about 40, and so I'm way under that limit, but this still allows me to broadcast in a really nice quality. So 8,000 is kind of to sit. Some people go even much higher than that. But there are caps on some of the streaming platforms. I think Twitch has theirs posted at around 8,000 kilobits. YouTube is actually much higher, but again, the bitrate I recommend is 8,000 for 1080p content. So that is something that you guys can check out. For recording, it's a very similar setup where under your encoder settings, you'll see a bitrate there as well. I have mine set at 12,000 kilobits per second, and this is to get a higher quality output on my recorded files than I'm actually broadcasting to the internet, because bandwidth when you're recording is not as much of a concern, right? All you're doing is just capturing more information as part of the file so that it looks better at the end of the day. So that's as deep as I'll go on how to set up your bitrate. Your rate control is CBR. The next thing I want to talk about, let's see here, is integrating with media platforms. Now, what does that mean? The cool thing is OBS has plugins now that are native as part of the software where you can actually set it up to just start streaming and manage your broadcast directly on YouTube. So behind my head here, there is a manage broadcast link and a start streaming link. If I click manage broadcast, I have the ability to bring up a menu that syncs with my actual YouTube settings. I can, even select, hey, this video is made for kids. I can update the thumbnail. I can select all of the different settings, change my title, description, even set the privacy to public, unlisted, private, etc. Or if you have multiple streams kind of scheduled and maybe they're unlisted or maybe they're just, scheduled for the future, you can go to select existing broadcast and then select one of the streams, and they will appear in here. You simply click them, and all you do is say select broadcast. Once that is done, it's locked in. You can select start streaming, and now directly from here, without having to go to YouTube or Twitch, you can just send your feed, and it's as simple as that. So OBS is super powerful for having to, basically stream content to the internet. Next is, we talked about bit rates and file types. I'm going to talk a bit more on file types here, specifically on your video. So let's see, your output settings. Under your recording, you'll have the opportunity to select a recording format. The two main formats are MP4 and MKV. MKV is the default selected, and there's a lot of benefits to going with that format. The main one is if for some reason your OBS crashes, the program closes, MKV kind of saves periodically so you wouldn't lose your recording. If, for example, I crash right now, the MP4 version, which I am currently using, would be corrupted and I wouldn't be able to get that information back. So why am I going with MP4? For me, it's more about like and then compatibility with a number of different apps. MP4 seems to be more widely accepted, but that is changing. So MKV could be something that I switch to in the near future because there have been times when, unfortunately, you lose the information and ultimately that's not what you're trying to do. So that is file types. Again, take your pick between MP4 and MKV, but now you know the difference. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about multi-track audio. So multi-track audio, what is it? Well, the cool thing is I have just recorded a little piece right before we started this this segment. I'm going to show you in the next segment when we talk about editing footage. Multi-track audio is a way to record different audio sources on different tracks so that you can individually manipulate that information. So, for example, when I stream or when I record gameplay, the idea would be to record my microphone, what you're hearing on right now, track, and any communication that I'm doing, say, I'm in a Discord chat with my teammates, right, or my clanmates, they would be on a different track, so I can control their voices independent from my voice. Then I might have music that's playing, and I might want the music on a different track as well. That way I can balance the audio a bit better in post. And then lastly, your gameplay sounds, right? Anything that you're capturing from your device or your gameplay, that is something that you're going to want to be able to manipulate independently as well. So how do you do all of that, right? The only way to do that is to record in multi-track audio. And this is probably the number one thing that separates kind of more advanced creators from the noobs, essentially, when you're first starting out. And so how to do that is to go to advanced mode at the top of the screen when you go to your output settings in OBS. As part of advanced mode, you can then go to recording, and then down here under audio track, you can check the different tracks that are available. You can see that I have 2, 3, 4, and 5 selected for my multi-track output settings. Now, what goes on those? Well, nothing yet. All you're doing right now is creating kind of what's possible. You're creating a canvas that you can ultimately use in the future. On streaming, I have just one audio track selected. It looks a little bit faint here with the way they've colored it, but it's audio track 1. And so what you can take from this and what you can remember is that audio track 1 is for streaming. Audio tracks 2 through 5 are for recording. So that gives me an ability to kind of blend all of my audio sources together for a stream. And then for my recording, I am individually manipulating those. So what does that look like? Under my audio mixer, you can now see there's some levels down here. You've got a mic, you've got comms, and you've got desktop. What those mean, mic, is what you're seeing right now. You can see the levels going up and where those sit on my computer. If somebody were talking to me, the comms button would kind of go up and down, right? If I had sounds or music playing on my desktop, the desktop would, you'd see similar levels. And so you can right-click these, go to advanced audio properties, and then a menu will pop up. And I'm going to make this menu a little bigger so you don't see the mirroring effect. But as part of this settings menu, you'll notice on the right side there are audio tracks. Now, this is super interesting, and one of these are irrelevant, so I'm going to uncheck all of them. This is where this audio source will output to your file as you're recording. And so when I select 1 and 2, I'm outputting my microphone to tracks 1 and 2. But if you recall, My streaming track is 1, so all of my audio sources that I'm hearing in my ears, I'm outputting to track 1. All of the other tracks, you'll notice that there's only one of these on a particular track. My comms are on track 5, my desktop is on track 3, my mic is on track 2. That way, when I pull a file into my editor, I can control those individually. So again, to get to this section and set up your audio properties accordingly, you want to right-click the audio mixer and select Advanced Audio Properties, and that should get you into that menu. So that is your audio, multi-track audio. The cool thing is, once you select all of this stuff and you've customized it and you've got this super awesome, like, neat setup, you can actually do multiple, profiles or multiple, what do you call it? Scene collections, which is, check this out. At the top of the screen in OBS, you'll notice a profile section. You'll notice a scene collection setting. Those scene collections, again, were the scenes and sources that you've configured as part of the profile. You can save those and export them so that maybe you're trying to load up your scenes on another computer that isn't yours, or maybe you're traveling and you're trying to duplicate your setup on your laptop. You can do that. Same thing with your profile. You can duplicate that as well. Your profile contains all of the things that is underneath your settings button inside of OBS. So essentially what that is are like your video settings, your audio settings, your streaming and recording settings. That goes under your profile, and that's what you'd save off and then also import later on. Your scenes and your sources and what is configured on your canvas, that is your scene collection. So again, the crash course on OBS and settings. Hopefully that's been helpful. Let's keep it moving though, because we have a lot to get through today. Next thing is editing. So this is fun. We're going to get into Adobe Premiere Pro, which is kind of the industry standard and also kind of what is recommended. So the first thing I want to talk about with Adobe Premiere Pro are templates, right? Like, how can we be more efficient? How can we get started with a project? And while I'll say there are some templates out there that you can use, I really, really prefer using my own. So let's dive into Adobe Premiere Pro. You can find all of these Adobe apps at adobe.com. They do have subscription fees associated with them. They vary. Check out the website, though, for information on what those actually would cost on a monthly basis. Typically, you're looking around $20 a month for each of these programs. So with that, Adobe Premiere Pro, I have some template files selected. Those are in my recents, so every time I open the program, I can just click the template. Now, what happens when I open my Premiere Pro is I have a preview area in the top left. That's this like blue highlighted area. I have a canvas, essentially, where it's like an output of what is kind of configured on the screen. I have a timeline, which is the bottom right section, and this is where, when I put things on the timeline to edit, this is the traditional timeline view that you see. And then for the template, I'm using the bin area. So like my file library, I've got a bunch of files already kind of loaded in. And so the way you actually want to accomplish this is when you first start up a brand new file, you would right-click down here and select New Bin. And when you select New Bin, you can actually just basically consider this a folder, right? And we'll just say, I'm going to call it stock footage for the purpose of this demo. So now we have stock footage, and the cool thing is you can go straight to your screen. So right here, or your computer, and let's say if you wanted to add a Powerbang thumbnail photo, I've got several of them. If I wanted to add these into my stock footage, I could simply highlight them, click them, and drag them over to my Premiere Pro footage. And now inside of my stock footage bin, I have all of these photos, which is super useful. To close out of these, you can click this sandwich menu at the top here and then close panel, and it'll get rid of that. And then at the project level, you'll see that it still exists, right? And so now I have this stock footage area. I'm going to delete this, but I just wanted to show you how you create these folders from the beginning. And what I've gone and done is I've created an assets folder, a branding folder, a music folder, and a sound effects folder. What do you put in those? Well, exactly what it's labeled, right? Label your stuff accordingly, and you can set it up to where now if I go into music, I have all of these sounds already in, and you just take it, drag it over to the timeline, and now I have an ability to add certain audio tracks to my edits very, very easily. And you can actually label these in a way where you'll notice, like when I look at this one, it's called Action Suspense Trailer. I didn't customize that name, that's how it came, but I felt like that was a pretty good label for what type of music this is. And then I can look at the audio waveform. Okay, cool, this is kind of building over time, it kind of ramps up. So this is a really nice way to actually see what's happening within Premiere Pro. So I've got my music set up, I've got sound effects set up, same exact thing here where all of the, whether they're gunshots, whether they're booms, whether there are little, button clicks or typing sounds, maybe a train whistle, all of the, sound effects that you would use, I have them in a sound effect folder inside of Premiere Pro. So super helpful. It takes some time to set this up, but I highly recommend doing it so you have a great template to. Next, I've got assets such as, what would I use often in my content? I've got exclamations, I've got arrows, I've got, X's, I've got footsteps, hearing icons. These are all things that, maybe you don't use all the time, but when you need something to accentuate your video, you want it there, right? So put it in your assets folder, and then under branding, you have information. It looks like I don't have anything in my branding folder right now. It must have gotten deleted somehow, but inside of branding, you would have things like your logos, your intros, your outros, any file that you're regularly using as part of your content, have it there. And again, the way to do that is very easily just go to your computer, grab the file you want, drag it into the folder that is appropriate. And then once you have everything kind of set up as a good template, you'll simply label it as such. You go to File, you go to Save as Template, and you can save it literally as a template, or you can just go Save As and then name it Template, which is kind of what I've done. I go to Close All Projects, I'm not going to save it. Mine is saved right here. You can see Project Template. It's added the 2s and 1s afterwards just because of like software updates that it's done, and I haven't been on my game enough to rename it. But essentially, Project Template, it's like, oh, that's Project Template. I click it, I'm good to go. I have one for vertical content as well, but those are things that are super useful to establish inside of Premiere Pro. The next thing I want to talk about are some of the shortcuts that you're going to use. So inside of a new project, when you go to, create something, I have a blank canvas now. And what I want to do is I want to pull in some footage. So let me just go ahead and grab a random file that I did a long time ago. And I'm going to put this on the timeline. And so this looks like a little esports content that I did. We've got myself, we've got Hot Jukes here. And we did some recording, and I can scrub, but some of the most common shortcuts that I use as part of Premiere Pro, number one is C. So if you zoom in on the timeline area on the bottom, if you click C, you can see very quickly that the cut tool is selected, or the razor tool. Who calls it the razor tool? I don't know anybody that does, but the cut tool. Now that we have C selected, I can put a cut on the timeline anywhere I want. Say if I wanted to, I don't know, delete this this section here. So if I want to zoom in, this section, maybe I want to get rid of it because of something that I said, it's gone. We can do that very easily. So another thing that you could do is wherever your timeline cursor is at, maybe I want to trim up to the next cut. The way that you would do that is click W. That is the forward tool. And you'll see very quickly that it just eliminates the content between the cut and where your cursor is. So if I click W right now, it just goes away. Similarly speaking, if you are past a cut, and I wanted to delete everything up to maybe the next time where I talk, which is a very frequent thing that you do. You can see I talk right here, and we want to eliminate that dead space. Instead of W, you would click Q, and Q will remove that all the way back to the previous cut. And again, depending on how many cuts you have around your content, this eliminates the need for you to have to click different sections, click delete, click the dedicated space, click delete again, and bring it together. This just allows you to very quickly click W or Q to bring it forward or backwards to the cut. So hopefully that is useful information. But I also want to demonstrate what we just talked about in OBS, which was multi-track audio. Now that I have a file here, you can see the multi-track audio in effect. So if we zoom in a little bit on what that looks like, you can see specifically the audio peaks, and I'm going to make this a bit bigger. We'll go here. We'll go here, and we'll go here. And you can see the audio peaks for both myself and my partner. They're at different times because we're alternating our talking. But this gives me the ability, let's say Hot Jukes is louder than me for the most part, I can go in, right click, and click audio gain, and I can actually turn him down, say by 6 decibels, and you'll see the entire audio track quiet down a little bit just for him, but not for me. This is where multi-track audio comes in super useful. To actually select an individual track, what you'll want to do is hold down the Alt key. So if you hold down Alt, that allows me to select his track in specific. If I did not hold Alt, when I click his track, it selects everything, which is super frustrating. And if you don't know the magic Alt shortcut, that can be really, really frustrating when you're trying to control these things. So if I wanted to select mine, click Alt. If you want to select multiple individual tracks, but still not all of them, hold down Shift and Alt. So Shift with most programs is add another thing to the selection. So I'd click Shift and Alt, and now you can see that I have both of those tracks selected. And if I deleted them, you could see that the A2 and A3 tracks remain. So speaking of deleting tracks, I'm not using A2 and A3. There's nothing on those. So it ended up just being myself and Hot Juke. So I'm going to select Alt and click, and then Shift Alt and click. We'll delete those tracks entirely. And I can take his track by selecting Alt here, and I can move it up to kind of clean things up. And now I'm just using 2 tracks. I have myself, I have Hot Jukes, and now I can independently control each one of those things. So that is some quick shortcuts on editing. You can save your presets as well inside of your menu. In your effects panel, which again I recommend you have on screen, you can do that by going to Window, make sure Effects is on screen, or Shift 7 will actually make that go away or come back. But inside of here I have Powerbang. Now, what is Powerbang? Well, that's a folder that I created, and again, you can click the menu and say New Presets Bin or New Custom Bin. That creates a bin, which is essentially a fancy name for folder. I don't know why they call it bins. Call it folders. That's more intuitive to people. But anyway, creates a new folder where you can then save your presets. One that I have is a standard pop zoom. So for example, in my content, I would maybe cut out a selection, and now I have just this section, and I want to apply a pop zoom. So I click and I drag it, and so now when I go over that, it's going to zoom to a particular corner. If it were like right now where I am in a corner of a screen, this makes a lot more sense because it's coming to that corner, it's zooming to me, but unfortunately for this, it doesn't make sense. Now, if I did big zoom, it's a different zoom, right? It's like, holy crap, that's really far in there. I have a setting black and white where if I apply that, the whole thing goes black and white. Maybe I'm trying to add some sadness to the show or something to that effect. Or I can zoom in on the center. And again, you get the idea. These are all presets which make editing go faster. So when you actually do something cool, you can control that in the edit section and then add a preset. Let's see, where did it go? They have moved it, I believe, since the last time I've done this. But anyways, we'll skip this section for now. It is, I think it's create a new preset. That's what it is. I have to go to a new preset and then do the action, essentially, whatever that action is, and then stop the preset. I will try to find where that is and leave it in the notes, because that's one thing I don't have immediately in front of me. Wanted to find that really quickly. Oh, well, we'll skip it and move on for now, but fact is, you can create presets, use those for your content kind of moving forward. But let's go back to presentation here really quickly. And we also have rendering and output and export queuing. These are both fairly simple, but when you get your footage done, essentially, wherever you want it, you'll go to export, which is a tab on the top of the screen, and this will allow you to export the media. The key thing that you is the format. H.264 is what you're selecting for the most part. This is just basically a high-def video that is going out with the H.264 encoding. There are a lot of different options here, but H.264 is where you're going to want to be. For preset, adaptive high bitrate means that it's going to have a high bitrate and just adapt to whatever the bitrate that you shot the quality in, or that you shot the video in, whatever quality that was, and that is pulling from OBS. You can also look to use presets like high quality 1080p, high quality 2160p, etc. I have it on just adaptive high bitrate. And then for your video settings, you can actually go in control frame rate, but it's easier just to match the source, to be honest with you. So if you record it a certain way that you want it, just keep that setting, and that's really all you have to do. From here, you click export in the bottom right. I'm going to turn off my camera for 2 seconds here so you can see that. Move my OBS out of the way. So if we move my camera, the bottom right, you've got an export button. You can click that to just immediately render out the file. It takes a few minutes to accomplish that. Or you can send it to Media Encoder. Media Encoder allows you to queue multiple edits before actually rendering them out. So if you needed to make multiple videos back to back, you could actually do that by sending them to Media Encoder, and then clicking render will export all of those files back to back, but that means you won't have them until it's time to actually use Media Encoder. So that is the crash course on Adobe Premiere Pro. We've got a whole bunch more to kind of go through today, so let's hop over back to our presentation here. Inside of our editing, let's go to, boom, let's go to audio next. Now, the interesting thing about audio is, and I don't want to spend a ton of time here, but it's something that I did want to cover because most people don't know about what is possible with audio, and it's actually pretty magical. It can make you sound really, really nice, and it can help you control maybe some annoying things that are often on your media, which could be background noise, it could be an air conditioner, a refrigerator that's running, no dad jokes please. It could be a hiss that's coming from your microphone that you're unable to properly noise gate. So as far as Adobe Audition is concerned, you can easily control that. But before I go to Audition, I want to tell you guys a little bit about, I guess, the decibel levels that you should be looking to kind of achieve. When you play your content, you're going to want to look at the audio bar on that right side. You can see down here in the right, there is a decibel meter, essentially, and you want to watch where that peaks. The yellow line that is left, that is where it peaked. So you can see right here, it peaked around, -6 or so. The output range for this, you never want to hit -0. That's where your mic starts clipping. That's where, the sound starts getting choppy, and it's where your eardrums get blown out as a viewer. So never have that output go above -3 would be my recommendation. If you want to play it a little bit safe, -5 or 6 would be the recommendation there. That is a very challenging thing to accomplish sometimes. But it's something that I highly recommend taking into account when you're setting your audio, like microphone settings, when you're setting your volumes. Make sure that your output range is appropriate, and also that the tracks that you want people to hear, for example, if you want people to hear your voice over your gameplay, for example, don't have the output levels exactly the same. So you wouldn't want your voice to be at -5 and your output for your gameplay to be at -5. You'd want that gameplay to be at maybe -15 or so. Like, it's a relative kind of exchange. And realize the further you go down on the decibel range, it's more of an exponential effect. It's not a linear effect where -15 to -5 is not the same as -25 to -15. -25 is far more quiet. Realize that's kind of in the weeds, but it is what it is. That's how the audio stuff works. Okay, so getting back here, we talked a little bit about range and peaking, balancing a little bit. Now let's talk about the actual audio manipulation, so like the noise gating and filtering. And this is where Audition kind of comes into play. The cool thing about Adobe products in general is that they work together, right? So the cool thing here is if I just select, maybe, let's go my voice. I'm going to click Alt on that and select my track. I'm going to right click here and I can just select Edit Clip in Adobe Audition. So when I click that, it just opens up the file in Adobe Audition, which is like super useful. And my environment is actually pretty quiet. I've got a nice little studio set up. This section over here is while I am not talking. And sometimes if your environment is not quiet, this has some sound, like it might look a little, rough or something like that. But what you want to do is highlight a section of dead air when no one is talking and there's no sound happening. If you actually zoom in on this, there is a little bit of an audio wave here, and that means that there is a frequency that's coming through on the microphone. From here, you can go to reduction and restoration and capture the noise print. The shortcut for this is Shift P. When you click Shift P, it just basically copies what sound print is there in the background, and then you can do Control Shift P, which is if you go to noise reduction here, you're doing a noise reduction process. And so on the whole file now, I'm choosing to reduce that noise, which is essentially background noise. I'm going to reduce that by, we can do 50%, we can do 70%, but you can see the audio levels actually going away. I usually go to about 50% of that is reduced, and I want to reduce it by 16 decibels. Now, 16 is just an arbitrary number that I chose, but it's something that still makes things sound natural, in my opinion. But I click apply, and then very quickly, this has less character to it. It's completely flat, so when I stop talking, now there's no sound coming through at all. This is super, super useful. Now, again, let's talk also about EQ and limiting, and that is much different than skating and filtering out some of that background sound. EQ and limiting come from, let's go zoom out a little bit and look at our whole noise track. We can go to effects, and we can go to first, the three things that I typically will pay attention to in Audition are normalize. We'd write this down. Normalize, hard limiter, and then under filter and EQ, the graphic equalizer 20 bands. So graphic equalizer 20 bands is, there's a preset that you can use, all good. Let's go to effects. The first thing you want to do is normalize, and normalize to -1 dB. So click apply, and that is going to make this quiet sound a bit more heard. It's normalized to -1 decibel, and then from there you can actually play with the filter and EQ. Go to the graphics, graphic equalizer 20 bands. I select bright and punchy for that nice little radio sound, and then the gain, I'm applying -2 decibels of gain to this, and so I'll click apply, and then it makes the sound a bit different. And then lastly, under amplitude and compression, this is where the limiting comes into play. I have a hard limiter that is set, and essentially what that is doing is making sure that no output sound is going above a certain amplitude. For me, I set it at -5 decibels and 3 decibel input boost. So you're going to see things get louder, but it will be constrained at the -5 decibel range, which is, you can see this section right here kind of hits that -5. And then you can, the whole time, hit the space bar if you want to hear this played back. So if that sound didn't come through, it's just me talking. So that's totally fine. But once you get audio to where you like it, this could take some playing with settings. All you have to do is click Control S and save, and automatically it is going to transfer back to your Premiere Pro. So if I go back to Premiere Pro, you'll see that this track now looks a lot different in a waveform than it did before, and it has been treated so the green kind of highlight color here instead of blue tells me that, oh, this has been modified and is an enhanced version of the original, essentially. It's also saved this audio track individually and mapped it to the file here. So this is a finished file, essentially, from an audio perspective, and that is super useful. So again, all you have to do is save the file in Adobe Audition, and it will automatically transfer it back to Premiere, which is super, super useful. So with that very interesting thing, I just wanted to make sure that you guys were aware that you can enhance voices, take out noise in the background in post-production, and you can do that inside of Audition very, very easily. So let's keep things moving, and we will talk about the next section of our presentation, which is our packaging. Next, we have Adobe.com, again, for Photoshop, which is kind of the industry standard. We also have a less expensive graphic manipulator program, if you will, in Canva. You can find that at canva.com. So I want to talk about canvas size and resolutions. Now, generally speaking, and this is the same for really any app that you're choosing to use, these are the sizes that you're kind of trying to hit. If you want to output an Instagram story, you're looking at 1080 by 1920, a 9:16 aspect ratio. If you're looking to develop content for a video, you would look at 1920 by 1080. That would be a full screen graphic. There are other resolutions, so if you're outputting in Quad HD or 2560 by 1440, or Ultra HD, which is essentially 4K. That's 3840 by 2160. Outputting at those resolutions, you'll want those parameters as you do the file. That way your graphics match in quality with your video. For thumbnails, you want 1280 by 720. And for Instagram posts, the square type, you'll want 1080 by 1080. So pretty basic stuff here that is standard across really any graphic that you're trying to create. But now I want to talk a little bit about workspaces and also in Canva, some of the areas that you're going to take a peek at here. So inside of Photoshop first, here we go. I'm going to go ahead and open a random file. So let's just click this Twitter banner here for, moved that one, so that's not super useful. Let's go, pull up this one. This is an example thumbnail that I helped a guy, let's see here. I don't know if I have the original, I don't. But regardless of what's on screen right now, the workspaces is what I want to show you all. So the ones that I use most often are the layers panel. Let me put this up on the screen. Here we go. There we go. So layers panel in the bottom right. This section here is what is useful for controlling the layers of what is in your canvas. Next thing is character. This is what I use to manipulate my text. A little bit of paragraph in there as well. And then on the top are color. You can select colors, but then also most importantly, swatches. Swatches are really, really useful for creating regularly used, like a brand kit, essentially. Canva does a really nice job of doing brand kits. Let's pull up Canva really quickly. Inside of Canva, you'll notice that there are brand, a label on the left, and I can click. I have a defined color palette. I have logos available. I have fonts that are pre-established, which for me, Canva is far better at establishing a brand kit and establishing brand standards and making it easy for you to utilize information. So for example, if I wanted to go to a next slide on Canva, I could change the background color here very simply by just dragging over something from my brand kit. And I know that it's still in line with my brand standards because it's right there for me the whole time. But let's put that back to black. Now we're good. That is Canva, and you can establish some of those brands by on the home screen here. You can simply go into brand, and then we don't need to book a free session. That's what this is right here, baby. This is a free session. Inside of brand kit, you click add new, name it, be like Supercell content, cointent, either way, it's all good. And then you click create. And just like that, now you just go in and establish your logos, your font, it, upload it, and it's done essentially. So that is how you create one. And then you can see inside of a brand kit now, all of those things that are established, you have the ability to utilize these for whatever you need, which is super, super useful. On the Photoshop side of things, you can establish color swap, which for me, I would create a new folder. And similarly, I would call it Supercell Content Creator, something to that effect. Click OK. And now I have a folder. I'll drag it to the very top. And then inside of here, when we select a color, let's say black is a Supercell color. We know that much. Now we have black, and we can just click this plus button here, and that will add a swatch where we can name our swatch and say, we'll call this SC black, and we can add this to our current library, and now it's right here for selection a little bit later on, which is super useful. Next, we could, let's say, select we've got all kinds of fun notifications popping up right now. Done, done, and done. Let's select another color. We'll go over here. We'll select this yellow color. This is probably not a Supercell color, but let's say it was. You can select here. We'll call it SC yellow. We'll say add it to the current library, and as you can see, you can make a color palette by entering in specific colors or even sampling colors. And now in the future, anytime you have a new, let's say we have a brand new thing, and it's like, oh, I want to do a background, and I want to do it in Supercell yellow. You can do that very easily by quickly sampling a color that you know is on brand. So I like to set up my color swatches in the top right so that you have a bit of a brand kit established inside of Photoshop. So that's something that for me is incredibly useful. As far as the helpful tools and where to find them, I want to show you just a couple of these really quickly. Inside of Photoshop, you can use the Camera Raw tool. So if I go back to share something here, let me open a file. Let me pull over, grab a graphic here, something that I don't even know what I'm going to do here. Let's grab this one. I'm going to grab esports in content, right? So we'll grab this little image and let's zoom so that it's just me. Sorry, Mr. Clash with Ash. So now I want to make myself maybe look a little bit better. This is something that really well with photos, but can manipulate all by itself, right? So let's go to filter at the very top, and then you can select camera raw, camera raw filter, or you can do Control Shift A. Now, when you select that, it thinks for a minute. It's got a lot of things that it needs to do, but ultimately it pops up this whole huge camera raw screen. Let me shrink this down a little bit. And now you have the ability to tweak things. You can tweak the white balance. You can change, like the texture. Let's say we want to add a lot of texture. You can see me getting really soft or really hard defined. And again, this is very much a play with it until you like it type of thing. For clarity, you can see, again, soft and ultra sharp. You can add a vignette to an image, black and white around the corners. Or you can even add grain to a particular image. This is super, super useful for customizing how things look. But also, inside of the detail section, you can sharpen, which, again, will be super useful for making things a bit more clear and easy to see at a small format like a thumbnail is. So after all of this is said and done, you'll have the ability to tweak, again, color, effects, curves, you can see how quickly you can change the look and the appearance of what is going on. Highly encourage you guys to just play with it. And then once you've got something that you like, you can click OK. It thinks, and then it applies that. And you can see like before and after the difference. But that is the Camera Raw filter. Highly recommend that you guys play with that one. The next one that we want to use is kind of how do we select the background and, maybe get rid of everything but me here. I'm going to show you guys two of these things kind of in action. In Photoshop, you'll go to Select, and you'll want to select Subject. Now, inside of the Photoshop, it's not as easy or as accurate as Canva from what I've found. But when you select Subject, it's going to automatically look at your image and then make a selection. And you can see that it's actually done that, but it's cut out part of like my headphones, for example, and it's only going part of my hair, some of the headphones, so it's not quite perfect here. Well, let's just say it is for some images are easier than others, but let's just say it's good. What you can do is layer via copy, and now I have me all by myself in a layer, and I can actually get rid of the previous layer. Looks a little goofy without the headphones, not gonna lie. So inside of Canva, let's take the exact same thing here. Let's go over here. I'm going to add a new slide, and then let's copy in that exact same thumbnail. This is actually kind of a challenging one because there's a lot going on in the background that make it like not super clean lines. But in Canva, the way to do the exact same thing is click Edit Photo. Whoops. And then Background Remover. So just click Background Remover, and very simply, it will remove a lot of what it thinks the background is, come up with the same exact solution here. But let's talk about a base layer image where maybe there's not as much going on already because I'm using a finished graphic. But let's use one that is maybe a bit easier here. Let's grab, let's go, this is a nice little headshot. Here we are. So it's me, right? And I've got a black background on here, which isn't that bad. But now if I click Edit Photo, I can click Background Remover, and it should do a better job here getting rid of the background, very simply. Let's hope. This is a massive file, though. This is like a super big graphic. So there it is. actually pretty dang solid here. Nice work, Canva. You can see even the hair at the top. I've got some definition around. There's some spikes sticking up. This is pretty good. And obviously now I can manipulate this. And if I wanted to make, I don't know, some sort of big head coming in on a thumbnail, we could do something like that. And now we've got a great start for what that looks like. So again, to go just a little bit further here, and then we'll wrap up, want to make sure that when you export files and when you name them, do it in a way that makes sense, right? Some common things to put in the title are what type of file it is. So maybe thumb would be part of a thumbnail file. The date in there is also super useful. I'm not going to tell you how to name your files as far as what to put in there, but think about how you would search for it later, because it is very common that it's like, oh, what was that file, or where was that thing? Try to avoid the final approach where you make all of these modifications and then name it more or less the same thing. Be strict about that, because it will only help yourself out a bit later on. So now we're going to move on to logistics. This is super, super useful info. This is some of my most useful stuff, in my opinion. Operating from the cloud for me is a massive, massive boon. This is very, very useful to be able to accomplish this. And what I mean by this is utilizing Google Drive and Dropbox to store your files there. So for example, if you go to, let's go OBS here. I'm going to pull this over to screen and we'll share. If you go into settings and then under your output and recording, you'll notice that my recording path here is Dropbox. I am sending it out to a raw footage folder. And what does that mean? Like, what does that even do for me, right? The interesting thing is if I bring up the Windows Explorer, if I go look at Dropbox, I can actually find a folder called PB Productions, which has my branding, it has my content. Inside of my content, I'll make this a little bit bigger so we can see, I've got things like my assets and graphics, I've got my final videos, I've got my raw footage, and that raw footage is super useful because this is where everything just gets dumped and where it all goes, right? So I'm saving off files to the cloud, but the glorious thing is that I could send these to an editor. I could send it to myself on my laptop. So maybe I'm just recording really quickly and I'm going to go downstairs and I want to work from my laptop tonight. I can do that without having to think about how I'm sending these files. Or maybe I'm actually headed to Germany tomorrow for part of the Creator Academy. I have stuff that I need to work on. I don't have to worry about where this exists because I'm using the cloud to actually get that done. So how to accomplish this is very simple. You go to either Dropbox.com and you install the application, or you can go over to Google Drive. You can download Google Drive for desktop. And I want to point out how clutch this actually is. So if you download Google Drive for desktop, it will give you an ability to embed on your computer Google Drive. So essentially, let me share my screen again here. Get rid of OBS from behind. There we go. Now you can see we have our Windows Explorer. I'm going to go right here on the left. I've got Google Drive. I've got My Drive. I've got Shared Drive. So if I click Shared Drives, this is like company stuff. If I go to My Drive, I've got all of my stuff here. So I can literally put all of my files here that I want to. And there's a variety of things. But the beautiful part is when I go to open something, if I wanted to, I don't know, see team videos, if I can go to PMGC, everything here is stored in the cloud, but when I double click it and open it, it will open inside of Photoshop or inside of Premiere Pro, rather than, you know, having to go to a web interface, download it, then find it in your Explorer, then open it. It just saves so much time. And then when you save it, it automatically is overwriting where it sits in the cloud as well. So highly encourage you guys to check out cloud storage for your content. It can be either with Google or Dropbox, are the two that I recommend the most. Some pros and cons of each. Google Drive is a bit slower to sync, but it is easier to use overall. I would say that the Dropbox is much faster, so it immediately uploads the second you are done kind of recording. That's super useful if time sensitivity is a factor for you guys. And then obviously, as you're bringing in help to support your content creation journey, super useful to communicate and collaborate with your editors. Now the files are just automatically there. You tell them what the file name is, and voila, it just appears on their computer because get this, they also have Google Drive for desktop installed, or the Dropbox app installed. So they just go to the editing folder on their computer that they have access to, and you're basically sharing the same computer remote, which for me, super useful, and you can do this with yourself as well. And then last point here on logistics is quick access or favorites. You'll notice again, if we go to the screen share, I have a quick access tab on the left where all of the stuff that I normally access is there. So for me, I've got, raw footage, final videos. Those are the videos that I've output. This is the stuff that I just raw recorded. I've got my PV Productions, which is my content creator business. I've got assets and graphics. I've got Supercell up there. I've got Titan series. I've got stuff for my company, things that I access often. To use the quick access menu, which I highly recommend, you simply open a folder. So let me just go show you this as an example. Let's go into, let's go content, and let's go, some of these are already there, thumbnail streaming, Stream Deck. So I have some Stream Deck stuff that's, pre-recorded. Not going to actually use these, but hey, for example's sake, you right click the folder and then you can say pin to quick access here. And then that will add over on the left now a pinned item for Stream Deck that I can just click at any time and it'll automatically take me there. This is incredibly useful for organizing your stuff. And so you can unpin by unpinning from quick access, it goes away. But that for me is how I get around and really kind of set up my environment. So it's super useful for me. Everything I need is like there at the click of a button. And if I need to transfer stuff into Premiere Pro, I can. It's all right there. If I want to access something in Google Drive, I can. It's right there. Same with Dropbox, etc. So very, very useful way to kind of set things up. So that is the logistics section. I would be happy to answer some questions here if you guys have them. So feel free to do that. But if not, I do appreciate all of y'all's attention today. So much stuff on my screen compared to usual today, so I haven't had a chance to check the chat as much. So I'm going to bring this up now. And full front, it says, whoa, I did not know you can download Google Drive. This is very, very clutch. I'm telling you, it will be a game changer if you actually download that and get that installed. I'm telling you, very, very useful. So to answer Super Aerox's question, this Photoshop, creating thumbnails, yes, we do have some courses and some trainings on actually creating the thumbnails, so make sure to check those out for more information there. I just wanted to focus today on settings for that. The last little section, I guess, on Photoshop that I didn't really touch on was how to export, and that for me, it's pretty easy here. Most people will do a save, if you will. I still have this dumb picture of me with no earphones. I don't know what's going on. But on the top left, if you click File, there's an export instead of a save. Most people think save or save as. If you go to export and then quick export as PNG, this typically will give you the controls that you need, and then you'll just save off the file with whatever naming convention you actually have, and it'll put it on your computer. So that is how you would export files. That was one thing that I forgot to share as part of the Photoshop section. But other than that, if you guys have questions, feel free to ask. So Brazen Rover, thank you for the question. Says, do you record live stream footage directly to Drive or Dropbox, or do you copy it later? I record it directly there. So what happens is when you have installation of Drive or Dropbox on your PC, it's actually typically recording locally first, but then once the file has been created, it's syncing later. I have a hunch, and I'm not 100% sure on this, but I think that's why Dropbox is faster, is because I think it's saving, or it's uploading while you're creating. So you're literally live streaming and it's syncing with the cloud the footage that it has available, which I believe is why Dropbox is faster. Again, I'm just speaking from experience here. I don't actually know. But what I will say is if you set the path inside of your OBS, and again, I can demonstrate how to do that really quickly. I'll pull up the screen share here. Inside of your settings, if you pull those up, you go to Output, Recording, and I'm recording while I'm streaming more often than not. So if I just select my path as Dropbox, you can easily do that. For me, I have both Dropbox and Google Drive for various reasons. I would recommend just going with one of those versus both, because again, as you're purchasing more space, I mean, you get into the terabytes worth of space. Not required, but I just do it so I have peace of mind knowing that I'm never going to run out. It's like, I don't know, maybe $100 a year for like terabytes worth of space. So it's not super cost intensive to do, but basically select the folder on your PC. And that's the beautiful part. So when you click browse and you go to locate that folder, if you don't have Google Drive for desktop or the Dropbox app installed, you can't actually do that syncing. You have to have those apps installed. Once you do, then you just navigate to that folder just like you would normally through Windows Explorer. And that makes it super possible for you to save those directly to the cloud, which is super useful. All right. Yeah, question from Supercell. We've got, what are some free alternatives you would recommend for photo and video editing? Again, for video editing, I don't know if I have great advice for free, because honestly, the video editing, that's something that if you're serious about this as a career, I recommend starting with the industry standard, which is Premiere Pro. That's the one investment that I would make, and I feel like it's worth it because the environment to create is so much different through each app. So I think building that proficiency as an editor, doing it in the paid app from the beginning, because you are going to be able to transition those skills that you learn to other uses later on, especially if like video game content creation doesn't work out, right? On the graphics side, Canva is where I would go 100% hands down for free usage. Essentially, very, very intuitive. And I am a 20-year user of Photoshop. I swore by it. Canva over the last 12 months has converted me from, I'd say, 60 to 70% of my Photoshop use. It's that good. It's better in many ways, and it starts as a free package with many of the features available free to use. So highly recommend going with Canva to start out. So that is super good question, though. Let's see. Yeah, DaVinci Resolve is also a solid editor. I will say that's a very good one. It kind of ties in with the Blackmagic Design suite of hardware and software. DaVinci Resolve has a lot of great editing. It's like really good for like color grading and stuff specifically, which is more useful when it comes to cinema and recording for like film versus like video game editing. So I think it's like a little bit different of a tool for the most part, but it is a free editor. And again, it just comes down to, if you're planning on making that switch later to Premiere Pro, you might as well learn on it in the first place. But if not, and you're just trying to get by at low cost, DaVinci Resolve is a good example. All right, so that is all I have for today. We are at time for the hour. I really appreciate your guys' attention. Hopefully, like I said, you took at least one or two things away with you today. There's probably a lot of review here as well for you. But again, the number of things that you're trying to accomplish are actually pretty few. You want to record your content. You want to edit it. You want to do the packaging around it. The audio piece, I don't know that a lot of people actually take to clean that up. I think that's a big difference in your content. So if you haven't considered tweaking with your audio in the past, maybe consider it now. And then lastly, the workflow and logistics side of things, that for me is what makes the biggest quality of life improvement as far as working with content. So again, thanks a bunch for your attention today. That is all I got. I will catch you guys in the next one. This is Powerbang signing out for Creator Academy. See you guys later.